Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Try to shoot this video outside. I had some technical difficulties. But at any rate, one of the things I wanted to discuss or reflect upon within our community, and that is the liberal and conservative debate. This person is liberal, this person is conservative. What does that even mean for African Americans, Afro-Latinos, Native Americans? What does it mean? You're conservative, you're Democrat. There's a video on YouTube, I think you can find it in multiple places, with Malcolm X, Malik Shabazz, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, where he talks about how the liberal and the conservative both vie for the affection of African Americans. And basically that both just use them up. They utilize them for the votes and really not doing too much to ensure that there's equity across the board within the United States of America. One of the problems that I have personally with this liberal and conservative debate amongst the African American community, and that is the issue of racism. Both sides act as if there's no racism on either side, past or present. We see this with the likes of McConnell. We see this with the likes of Candace Owens, Thomas Sowell, many of these individuals like this. Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, like this. And the sad part about it is that when we look at both parties, Democrat and Republican, right? Liberal and conservative, there's a consistent path of racism on both sides, which, of course, does not benefit the dark-skinned people of America, none whatsoever. Even if you decide to pick a side, right? You decide to pick a side. One of the problems we find is that from the conservative side, the African Americans who are conservative or Republican, they make the argument that, hey, look, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican and the Emancipation Proclamation comes from him, right? Because he made the Emancipation Proclamation and it was Republican, this prompted many African Americans to be Republican, right? And many say, the Republican Party is the party of freedom or the party of equality, right? Walaikum salam, rahmatullah, Big Mike. So my issue with this is that, one, they do not look at the reality of Abraham Lincoln despite the Emancipation Proclamation, right? What was his views, right, of the so-called Negro, right? The use that they used at the time. What was his views, right? And as we know, as he himself stated, that he didn't believe that our people were equal to the white society, right? He didn't believe that. He felt that we shouldn't run for office, we shouldn't hold office, sit in juries, all of these things that normal citizens will participate in a society. He believed that we were not capable, and nor should we partake in any of these things. So Abraham Lincoln's view. And as we also know, with regards to freeing the slaves, was it for the slaves' benefit? Or was it a political an economic, political statement, because we know that in reality, they was moving toward the Industrial Revolution. So this is the history in a nutshell. Not gonna go too deep, but this is an aspect of history that Republicans don't like to talk about with regards to Abraham Lincoln, right? Whether they be political figures or whether they be analysts. I guess if you want to call Candace Owens an analyst, right? You know, this is the issue that I'm having with them, not acknowledging this aspect of history. Now, on the Democratic side, right, they also had the propensity to act as if the Democratic Party was never racist. There was never a branch of the Democratic Party called Dixiecrats, right? This is a problem on that end. So when we speak with Democrats, especially African Americans and Puerto Ricans, it's like, hey man, you know, you're Democrat, but these guys have a history of racism toward our people. And some don't want to hear it. Some acknowledge it, but they look at the present, right? Well, the Democratic Party of today is not like the Democratic Party of yesterday. The Republican Party of today is not like the Republican Party of yesterday, right? These are the claims. So let's look at whether or not this statement is true. One of the things that are normally discussed when we talk about this issue of parties not being what they were in the beginning, and that is the issue of the switch, right? There was a switch. Now, conservatives outright denied that there was any type of switch, right? What I mean by switch, that is Democrats becoming Republican and Republican becoming Democrat, right? This is the switch I mean. So when we look at history, what do we find? Do we find any type of switch? And the answer is yes. When does this switch take place? This switch takes place approximately 1964, right? About 1964, during the administration of Lyndon Johnson. At that time, the Dixiecrats, who are a branch of the Democrats, had an individual by the name of Thurman. I think his name was Strom Thurman, right? He was a Dixiecrat, trying to run for president. And they had the civil rights bills, you know, on the table. Lyndon Johnson signed them, right? Lyndon Johnson signed them. This caused a problem within the Democratic Party, right? Lyndon Johnson wanted what? He wanted black votes. So when he signed it, this enraged the Dixiecrats, right? So much so that it prompted them, through the leadership of Thurman and Wright, it prompted the Dixiecrats to leave the Democratic Party and enter into the Republican Party. Now, the question is that I like to ask many individuals from the Republican Party: did you turn them away? Were the Dixiecrats turned away when they joined the Republican Party? The answer is no. They wasn't turned away. So, with that being said, they was welcomed with open arms. But what did the African Americans do? Due to the fact that Lyndon Johnson signed the bill, they left the Republican Party because they felt the Republicans no longer had their back and they could no longer trust the Republican Party. So they became Democrats. Now, if that is not a switch, I don't know what to tell you what a switch is. Definitely a switch. So much so that we know that the Dixiecrats are the ones who made the Confederate flag, right? It's a historical fact. They made the Confederate flag. So when you look at who waves the Confederate flag now within the two parties, who waves the flag? Is it the Democrats that wave the Confederate flag? Or is it the Republicans that wave the Confederate flag? We all know the answer. January 6th was the answer. Did they storm the Capitol with what? Confederate flags. I'm here in the South. People who carry the Confederate flag are Republicans. It's a historical fact. Now, many of these Republicans who carry the Confederate flag are possibly first generation Republicans, right? Because as we said before, the people who made the Confederate flag were the Dixiecrats. This happened approximately in the 60s, right? So with that being said, when you get to my generation, if you were born Generation X, I want to say, what, 65 to 80, something like that, Generation X. So all those people who are Republican, their parents and grandparents might have been Dixiecrats at the time. But this is an unfortunate aspect of history that neither side want to discuss. The switch and the racism on both sides. So to me, this is of no benefit if you're not going to discuss it. So what does this mean for the African Americans? What does this mean for the Afro-Latinos? What does this mean for people of color in this country? And that is, it means that you can't trust either party. This is my position. Not forcing it on anyone, not asking anyone to agree. But my question is, how and what way did our people benefit for being members of either of these parties? And what are any of them doing now with regards to the well-being of the people who built this country, meaning African Americans, right? What are they doing now? What are the Republicans doing? Candace Owens, what are the Republicans doing right now? Now you want to talk about Trump, he freed some people. Okay. Trump, he did this, he did that. For African Americans, you won't talk about Obama. Obama freed some people also. He did this, he did that. But my question is, what was the outcome for the people who've been loyal to that party the whole time? And what is the outcome of the people who now left the Democratic Party and who are now all of a sudden conservative? What are Republicans doing for you? Because on the Republican side, we see people like McConnell, right? And we see people like, what's that other senator from South Carolina? The white guy. You know who I'm talking about? Anybody know who I'm talking about? Lindsey Graham, I got it. Lindsey Graham. These guys say there's no systemic racism. Then, I'm coming. One moment. I'm coming. Then we have Tim Scott, who say there's no systemic racism. But yet, when he tried to put forth a bill, this happened a couple of weeks ago, right? Anti-lynching bill, right? The Democratic side, they stalled it. Yeah, they stalled it. And he received racial slurs from that Democratic side, right? He did. So the question is, okay, you complaining about the Democrats, what are you doing about the racism in your own party, Tim Scott? These are issues that we really need to look into and ascertain whether or not it's of any benefit for us to be labeling ourselves conservatives or Democrats. This is the issue. Now, with regard to the Muslim community, we're finding these arguments coming in. You have conservative Muslims, right? You have those who have a problem with critical race theory, just like their white supremacist counterparts. They have a problem with social dominance theory, which was, I forget their names, but one of the creators of social dominance theory is an African-American man and a European-American woman, right? Both psychologists, right? They have a problem with that. They had a problem with the 1619 Project because it focused on slavery, right? No one denies that 1776 is when the United States of America became a country, right? You got your independence then, right? But the economy that gave United States of America that push or that boost started in 1619. This is the point, right? So you had many people write books against 1619. Even Arab political analysts, some guy named Zaid, I forget his last name, you know, he wants to weigh in. And this is another issue in and of itself. When Muslims delve into these liberal and conservative debates, right? They had the propensity to forget that, first and foremost, you're a newcomer to this country, right? Like, you really don't got no skin in the game like that to think you can check African Americans, especially when it was through the blood and sweat of many African Americans that allowed many immigrants to come in the first place, right? So how you figure you can come to this country and tell African Americans what they can talk about and what aspect of history they can focus on, right? This is arrogance on the part of many of our brothers from the lands of the Muslims, right? Or they can come in and criticize, oh, you African Americans, you don't stick together, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't work hard, you. And it's like, bro, the only reason why you got money because we paid the way for you to get here. Our people did. So who are you to come in here and criticize? And matter of fact, here's a bigger question. What type of help are you offering? Considering that it's the African Americans and the Latinos coming to Islam in droves. What assistance are you giving? Do you even know the history? Now, to give credit where credit is due, many have studied history. They get it. They get it. But the vast majority, no. Because they themselves have been infected with what? White supremacy, racism. Why? Because they're anti-black sentiment. Sheikh Yusuf Rios spoke about this some days ago. We did the 5-2 initiative. We did a whole segment on supremacy ideology with Dr. Abdul Haq Baker, Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk, like this. Sheikh Khalid Green, like this. Sheikh Granite Banakwa, like this. So we've dealt with the issue. And we'll continue to deal with the issue. But not to go too much on a rant, I just wanted to say, man, that ask yourself, you being Republican or Democrat, how does that benefit you as an African American or you as a Puerto Rican? How does it benefit you? Saying you're conservative, but not calling out the racism on the conservative side. You, a Democrat or liberal, and not calling out the racism from the Democratic side. It's hypocrisy to me. Joe Biden, he said, we're going to do a study on reparations, right? We're going to do a study, right? And we'll see what we come up with, right? How long is this study going to take? Because You know, just like I know, that the issue of reparations, see, we just like looking at slavery, right? Reparation for slavery. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. The study of history is bigger than that. Now, what about the 100 years of Jim Crow? It's bigger than that. A lot bigger than that. Matter of fact, here's some more for you. What about the lucrative cities and towns that African Americans created, right? The economies in those cities that were destroyed, right? Either through policy or physically destroyed from white rage, right? What political party did these people follow? This is the question. And you'll find many times when you study these issues, the Democrats and the Republicans were in cahoots together. They were in cahoots together. So again, I ask you, what type of dog, cat, or any type of animal do we have in that fight? Liberal and conservative. All they want you for is your votes. That's it. Because why? You want to know why the Democrats can ask you for your vote and then not talk to you until they need your vote again? Because you have nothing to offer. As a group, you have nothing to offer. What do I mean by that? Got to go with my man, Dr. Claude Anderson. You're not buying the politicians. And if we can't afford to buy them, rent them. We don't have PACs. We're not lobbyists, right? Many of us don't have lobbying license. So what type of influence you gonna play? So these are questions. I'm coming, one moment. So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves in this issue of Democrat, Republican, and picking sides. We need to call out both sides. If you're a Democrat, call out the foolishness on the Democratic side. If you're Republican, call out the foolishness from the Republican side. But as a person of color and Muslim, what's the benefit? Because for real, we need to be participating in group economics. And that's a wide term, but these are things that we need to focus on. Because why? Politicians don't understand anything but money. So, if we want our voices to be heard and policies in our favor, you got to do what everybody else is doing. The Koch brothers, all of them, you got to do what they're doing. And that is, you got to give these politicians money. Because why? The politicians make sure that their donors are straight first, then the rest of the Americans. So with that being said, I end this video. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, shadin la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Whatever I said was beneficial and good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if anything that was incorrect or evil, then make no mistake about it. It comes from me and the shaitan. Make no mistake about that one. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.